behind. I have a lot to introduce for him. So you're going to hear my Chicago voice go real fast as I go ahead and say all of these amazing accomplishments for Dr. Joe Lezama. So for many of you guys already know Dr. Lezama. He is our Vice Chair of Academic Affairs. He joined us here in July of 2000. So after finishing a residency here at USF in internal medicine, he is a proud Tampa native. He attended St. Lawrence Catholic School, and I think we all know that he attended Jesuit High School too as well. Yes, he is a yeah, wonderful. Yeah, he is a proud graduate of the UF College of Medicine. We won't hold that against him. In 1997, where he eventually became the 40th physician in their 65-year history inducted into the UF College of Medicine Wall of Fame in 2020 as a recognition of his academic achievements and national work in education, patient safety, and community medical emergency management during national and international disasters. During his 25 years on faculty, he has served as Chief of Medicine at the James A. Haley VA for 20 years, running now as the longest running nationally Chief of Medicine and Vice Chair of Education for 13 years here as well, which he very graciously transitioned that role to myself. He has won over 30 teaching awards in his career, either handed out by the USF College of Medicine or even national societies, including the AAMC Humanism Award in 2007. He is an ACP Laureate awarded in 2021, and he has been inducted as a Master of the American College of Physicians, which is a distinction given to only the top 0.1% of practicing general internists by the ACP. He solo authored his first book, Internal Medicine Learning, A to Z and 1, 2, 3, which enjoyed a top 10 run in Amazon bestselling medical education and training lists for much of 2024 and early 2025. And this was written to promote the highest success possible for medical students and internal medicine residents to learn the exhaustive, comprehensive nature of our discipline. He will be speaking today on the history and future of Morning Report, Chief Residency, and other IM entities. And without further ado, thank you so much, Dr. Lezama.
Thank you. Thank you for the very kind introduction. And Dr. Mateja is one of my many star residents that are here today and are online. So a lot of the alumni, we're going to try to join online. So I appreciate you guys. As Candace mentioned, this topic is one that really has never gone through, and hopefully we'll have some time, and I'll keep an eye on time, that we can have some discussion and feedback at the end on Morning Report, Chief Residency, and if I have time, I'll talk about some other IM entities and their histories. And here are the objectives, with basically you've heard. In the interest of time, I'll go right to, I have no disclosures, and I forgot to write that, no conflict of interest. Every year, I like to give a grand rounds to give you some history of our Department of Internal Medicine. It is a very special department here. And I wanted to go through what was on my list when I was sitting as a fourth year student, many of them who are here from the Morsani USF College of Medicine. And I was deciding where I was going to go to residency. So my checklist look like this. I was very much thinking I was going to be a specialist. So you never know where you're going to end up is the lesson, right? Either hem-onc or pulmonary critical care and sleep medicine, because I had an incredible mentor in Dr. Gonzalez Rothy, Dr. Ricardo Gonzalez Rothy at the University of Florida, who was a pulmonary critical care doctor. And you always want to follow in the steps of people who you admire. Extensive ICU opportunities, because I love procedures as a student. Strong faculty in general internal medicine, because that's what everybody at UF told me, that it sets the table for the entire department. Engagement of faculty and house staff on interview day, that I was going to watch to see, are there smiles? What's the body language? What's the feeling? I wanted to see a teamwork, sense of teamwork from the faculty. And then I had Morning Report on there, believe it or not. I mean, how many people put that on the list? But it was on my list. Was it fun? Who ran the Morning Report? How many faculty were present? Was there a high academic environment in that conference? Dr. Craig Kitchens, another great influencer of mine at the University of Florida, told me that the importance of the academic conference, it was the table setter for not only my education during medical school, during residency, but also beyond residency, whether I went into specialty or not. So here comes USF, and I come interview here. I interviewed right at the 25-year mark, literally, in 1996, November 17th to be exact. I interviewed, and they were in their midst of their 25-year celebration. Roy Benke, which these Grand Rounds are named for him, Roy Benke Grand Rounds, is the founding chairman. He served as chair for almost the entire 25 years. That's an incredible run as chair. He was a master clinician, recruiter, motivator. As Dr. Altis said at last year's Grand Rounds, the residents would have walked over fire coals without shoes for him. Many founders were still on staff at the time of the interview, which really meant a lot to me as I was looking at it. And here's, as I like to say, the best adjective for Roy Benke is gregarious. The gregarious Roy Benke. Even in pictures, he looks gregarious. And these are the incredible faculty that were still here at the time that I interviewed. Alan Goldman, two L's, sorry, Alan, who served as the second chair. John Sinnott, who served as our third chair, and who I got to serve as vice chair of education with honor, to work with John, what an honor, over 12 years. Sam Buchantz, without the H, 1972 to 1997, and actually was still active to about 2008, to about 1 year before his death. And Richard Locke, who actually was 1973. It was, no, Allergy has their 312th edition of their newsletter, and they had an excerpt from Dr. Lockhe's first year in 1973. And Dr. Lockhe's still part of our faculty, which is absolutely incredible. Phil Altis, who many of you seen at Morning Report, and David Solomon, you see the years there. Willard Harris, who served as chief of medicine for 22 years at the VA, which I thought was insane until I hit 20, and then I'm like, maybe I'm insane too. Harold Edelman, who was absolutely incredible in motivation. Dr. Saba and Dr. Dinwiddie and Hemonk. Brian Bogner and Mike Flannery, who were such incredible presences in general internal medicine, were recruited by Benke. Jurgen Nord, Patrick Brady, and also somebody at input there, H. Worth Boyce. This is just one slide that maybe represents 25% of what Roy Benke recruited here. So I was already feeling, wow, this place is something else. And there's Dr. Saba at his retirement in 2010 with me. And what did Roy Benke bring to USF, which will spill over into what is Morning Report? A rigorous society involvement in all fields by USF. Outstanding clinical care sites. With the Haley in 72, Haley took off the same year USF College of Medicine took off. There were 6 joint medical school VAs takeoffs in 1972 to 74. USF was one of those 6 medical schools that were born with the VA. The medical clinics, Moffitt Cancer Center was born in 86, for those wondering how. It's a relatively young center. Extensive educational involvement with med students highly involved at daily conferences. He made the Grand Rounds what they are. Even there was Saturday Morning Report with Dr. Benke that was standing room only as people tried to stump Dr. Benke and bring in patients for him to diagnose. And so it was number 1 on my rank list. This is the picture I took standing in line behind Dr. Tom Truncal. That we were both in line in that summer 1997 to get our ID photos. I tried to make some short talk with him. He quickly stopped it. And I said, man, I'm going to be that guy's boss someday and get him back. And it worked out. So for students, there's always that hope. If you have issue with your resident, one day you might be their boss. So, and then this is my graduation with Dr. Altis, who's looks a lot slimmer these days as he walks the entire city of Tampa. I almost ran over him. No, I'm not kidding. Leaving the Academy of the Holy Names, some guy went, ooh, I'm sorry. And it was Phil Altis. I almost killed my program director. So, and what's happened in the next 25 years and how things have changed and how USF has kept its characteristics. So an incredible development of our department. The year that I joined USF, Only one other faculty member joined that year, and was Dr. Truncal. I can't shake him. He's still here 25 years later from that date. That was it. I mean, in the year 2014, the Department of Internal Medicine hired 10 hospitalists alone. We probably have had 10 people hired in the last minute in the department. And really double-digit faculty hires are expected, and we're so excited about that as we launch so much in faculty development. We have expertise in TAVR, interventional GI, interventional pulmonary, national recognition as with all these awards. Kelly Aller, Program Director of the Year. Congratulations, Kelly, still. We're celebrating that till somebody else takes it away from her next year. Record number of faculty and trainees giving scientific presentations. But what brings people to USF and has hooked them most? Morning Report. That's what's done it. That's where the secret sauce of USF has been for a lot of folks. And look at the list of, I probably could do 10 pages, and I apologize to anybody I left off this, and I even tried to squeeze as much as I could. Even Giangreco, I just put his nickname, the Godfather, for Dr. Martin Giangreco. But it's incredible the number of folks here. And look at all the specialties that they've gone to. The common thread, Morning Report, was the tractor beam that brought him into USF. And why I feel Morning Report has to always be kept at its highest peak is because it has been the entryway, the tractor beam, for us to get the best faculty into our residency. And from there, the residency going into academic medicine, which is a huge goal of Dean Lockwood and our chair, Dr. Mosley, is how many of our trainees can we push into academic medicine? And we actually have been able to get baseline numbers there. But what a list. Shreya Narayanan, Joanne Tran, Harold Paul, Austin Follett, Bobby Ledford, so many superstars. And I, in preparation for this Grand Rounds, talked to 100 alumni. And it's easy for me to talk to 100 alumni. I have a list on my cell phone, about 588 names. And I surveyed 100 of them. 68 of them said their best memory of the program is Morning Report, is the academic corps d'esprit that came out of Morning Report. The program director leadership was mentioned by 16%. Was honored that 10% felt board review was up there. So, woo, Dr. Flannery and Dr. Lezama's board review sessions, and then a bunch of other myriad things were 6%, but 68% was Morning Report, highlighting why this is so important to keep at the top of our game. And why, I asked, what are the memories from the alumni? The lighter side of attendings were seen, very interactive nature of the attendings, and the social capitalization that came out of these, of the connections that have lasted years, such that I have 568 plus alumni on my cell phone. And so Dr. Edelman really was a huge factor in that. And so he kicks off some of the lighter moments of Morning Report that I'll use throughout the day to use laughter to help emphasize some of my points. But he was an outstanding educator, and him and Sam Buchans, I have a prop here, him and Sam Buchans helped to make hospital medicine the 7th best journal in the 90s and the early 2000s out there. And we were featured, Morning Report was the NEJM, if you will, clinical pathological lecture that is in NEJM. USF was the home, where USF was the source of the cases in this journal, which is absolutely fantastic. Great for Harold and Dr. Buchanan. So we were having one day where we were going over cases, and Dr. Edelman seemed really disturbed about something. I was moderating the conference, and I felt maybe I took a misstep. He's upset about something. I said, Harold, what on earth is bothering you about this case? I know you. Just speak up. And he said, okay. He said, it's stumping me. It's driving me crazy, Joe. How many who's are there in the chorus of Who Let the Dogs Out song? And we all just absolutely, is it 4 or 5? I can't decide. And In case you're wondering, it's 4, and there's the chorus right there. And that was the Baha Men who sang that song. So it's that spirit of, you have this attending of such great magnitude, and he's connecting with Who Let the Dogs Out. You know, that's what I really think is the nature of USF. So early morning report, this comes from the Journal of General Internal Medicine, 1997. It was created in public hospitals and generally attended by one attending. It was either the service chief of the hospital, somebody like myself, or it would be a chair if the program was advanced enough to have a chair. Medical students attended with their teams, but they were not to say a word. You know, and usually they were sequestered in the back. A lot of these were with intimidation, fear, and intensity that, thank God, we don't see in today's conferences. And why, again, would this happen? If you go back to the 40s and 50s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, public hospitals for training programs had attendings that would come and devote their time 3 to 5 days at a clip. There was really no, at most places, there was no department, if you will. There were people who had academic privileges, and they would come for 3 to 5 days at a time. Can you imagine evals, Candace, with that? So trying to chase evaluations. So the truth is there was no evaluations back then. It was, you know, you take the test, that's your evaluation. The service chief or chair wanted to ensure the safety of the patients because of the variability of the guest attendings, and that's why Morning Report was born. It was not for an academic reason, it was for a safety. It was patient safety. Who knew that? If an LP, and it was great because the literature in the 97 article, if an LP was missed at a Morning Report case, they would notice that LPs would rise for the next 3 to 4 weeks by 80%. Imagine the ID consults would probably rise as well. If a diagnosis was mixed that required a taxi cab sample to be sent out, there would be an increased cost to the hospital of taxi cab services, all coming from Morning Report. That was pretty cool. There were 10 articles really published as far as the importance of Morning Report from 75 to 97. The best one's probably the 79 NEJM, the Gruden-Siegler, which really is the first article to talk about Morning Report as representing the tripartite mission of what is internal medicine training. Delivery, the best in delivery and care, a return to a classroom to make sure you don't lose the science that you learned in undergraduate medicine, and to serve as a social gathering for house staff. As Dr. Mark Mosley says, is part of his term I love is stickiness. Is part of the stickiness so that everybody feels that they have a sense of belonging and that their work matters and has input. In 97, that was a popular year for Morning Report. There was also another one run by Ram Rantan that, again, talked about the socialization of the house staff, but also advised programs to use Morning Report as a biopsy. And the biopsy was, what's the morale of the house staff, right? I always like to say the TSH level in this room is 85. Sometimes if I'm like sit in the back and the moderator's having problems with people, speaking up or participating, I'm like, the TSH in this room is 85, for God's sakes. Let's get going, guys. And that a lot of the disconnect from the history and physical exam at the bedside, though, had become more of the show and tell of Morning Report. So it also gave some warning and some pause to make sure that we weren't losing some of the art of the bedside exam that should be discussed at Morning Report. And again, that's because a lot of times patients used to be brought to Morning Report. And the way I think of Morning Report and whether it's vital or not is several stages. One, I think Morning Report is like preparing for game. It's like watching game film or watching post-game film, right? Why did we lose to the Eagles by 5 points? Why did it take us 5 hours to get woken up before? Why did it take a 65-yard field goal to wake us up against the Eagles? That's part of what Morning Report is watching and reviewing a case as to what could be done better, how you will attack it from the next time. I also view Morning Report almost like an AMC, like going to the AMC movie theater. Especially if we had 2 cases and a short presentation, I'm going to watch an action film, a rom-com, and, you know, a pure comedy as well. And, you know, this would be like the week, you know, this would be like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the posters presented. For me, Morning Report felt like, you know, a job where I could actually go to conferences and learn and participate. I've signed me up. It was a no-brainer. And this is what it should be. It should look like a, you know, like a comedy routine, or it should be fun. People should be engaged. They should be awake. They should be laughing. Laughing, as I stated in my last Morning Report, activates the reward center and also activates memory retention. So Dr. Altus really made Morning Report what it is for me and for many of the faculty here, many of the alumni who are joining. And he had some great altruisms, as we called them. One side does not look like the other, Sesame Street song, where he would say, I can read a CAT scan as good as anyone else. I'm just a good old country internist, but, and it always was, that but after was something special that was going to come out. He would say, is it Monday morning? Is neurology here? No. Oh, thank God. If I have to if I hear get thee to an MRI one more time, I will just lose my stuff. And Wade Weaver did a great deadpan on that. Two things you never want to see being made: medical treatment guidelines and sausages, because he says it's horrible the way medical treatment guidelines are come about. This calls for a moment of appropriate arrogance, where he would say in a Morning Report case, I'm sorry, I got to stop you here, but this is what you say if somebody tells you this or a consultant tells you this. This is not possible because of A, B, and C. He said it's appropriate arrogance because of your knowledge as an internist. And of course, surely not. And one more thing, don't call me Shirley, one of his favorites. Here's what was the striking literature and why Morning Report is at risk starting about 12 years ago. This was the title of the article, Ritual That Should Be Abandoned. And that got a lot of people's attention. This was in the journal Grad Med Education 2013. And because the 2000s were now showing a clash between hospital administration saying you have to get patients out, discharge before noon. And I faced this at the VA, where people tried to get me to either stop Morning Report or move it to a different time because it was inhibiting the ability to discharge patients. And I fought against it successfully. I'll turn in my badge if you make me move Morning Report. And based on a review of 56 studies at that time, you couldn't really find any good evidence that Morning Report made a difference, because outcomes were so difficult to measure. And most internal programs have decreased the number of conferences from over the years. And I probably talked about 60 programs getting ready for this grand rounds. And this is what we look like every day for the first 15 years I was on faculty. We had a board review every morning at the VA with me or Mike Flannery at TGH. And then when Mike took off, when Mike had to leave because of his disease, it's chronic conditions that hit, it morphed a little bit, but it used to be 7:30 and 7:45. In fact, there was a roast, because sometimes I'd be rushing up to get there on time. The residents roasted me for, going up 7 flights of stairs at the VA, and now I'm ready to give board review. So that was Todd Miller who gave that great impression of me. Then we go to Morning Report, which was 8:45 at TGH or 8:30 at the VA, and we would have noon conference and grand rounds every day. If we looked at 2018 and there was a study on 10 sites at the VA, and these were the VAs. You can look at them for yourself, but they include San Diego, where Dr. Cannella used to hang around at UCSD not far away, to Washington, D.C., to Minneapolis, to New Orleans. And times range from 7:30 a.m. to San Diego, that the sun comes up early, I guess, and get to work and do a Morning Report, to 3 o'clock in New Orleans, and then hit the bars after, I guess. The diagnosis was known to the moderator 87% of the time, which is incredible, because I never know what the diagnosis is when I'm moderating, nor do I want to know. I like for students to be able to see how I reason, and residents to be able to see how I reason through the case, but 87% of the time, they already knew the diagnosis. That takes away half of the seeing the moderator struggle sometimes and get frustrated. That's good. It's good to see the pain of what's going through the brain in there. 70% of all teams were expected there, even if post-call. 42% of cases presented were rare. And so they were pointing out, maybe we need to put some more bread and butter in a morning report. And interns, residents were free of pages or admissions in 8 out of 10 sites, which is something we need to keep working on here. As you see, 90% were run solely by the chief residents. And the mean number of attendings was 3 at the conference. And then I said, nice number was 0. It's a joke. 0 specialists at any site during 225 observations. Is that saying something? Not one specialist. We have tons of specialists here today, so we're kicking their ass. We got endocrinologists, we have pulmonary, we have ID. We're kicking ass here. Only 3% of the time, which is one of my pet peeves, was there a follow-up from a previous case. It's so many times that, can you imagine reading Old Man in the Sea and getting presented to the point where he was maybe going to face the marlin or the tarpon or whatever the hell he was getting. And then you don't know what happened, right? The story's fascinating. And many times we tell the story to a certain point, but we never finish the story. And so that was one of the criticisms of Morning Report. And then we went to the pandemic. So this was a good day when we could have, and this is a dermatology education thing we did. So, but this is a good day when we had the cameras on. This is what we're used to, right? Bubbles and letters. And if I was at home lecturing, my daughter would come and say, what are you doing? No one's listening to you, you know? And I'm like, yeah, they are. And it's like, they're not laughing. Oh my God, she's right. No one's listening to me. I was like, you're just speaking into a computer. But this is what maybe we had a picture of somebody, you know, at least, you know, still, but it was mostly letters and bubbles. And if we look around morning reports across the country, IU, which is the Birth Roots with Roy Banky, they have noon conference now only twice right now, a week. When they go to interviews, they go to 3 times a week, but the only conference is held at the university and it's Zoomed during that time because they've started to do, I think they're still on Zoom as well. I think they are Zoomed and the student and the interview candidates are Zoom. Because Candace, they're still all Zoom. Yeah, they're all Zoom. Then University of Minnesota, twice a week with separate conferences at the VA and the university. Residents of the ward service and chief residents and med students attend. As you see, it's so different, right? MUSC Charleston, 3 times a week, 8:30 to 9:30, with separate sites joining virtually. And they have some cool stuff like a resident-driven safety catch, which is a pretty cool little feature, you know. So talking a lot of these programs, definitely I think we have a lot of side things that we can do that maybe we're not doing. At UCLA, which Amit Kothari is part of the UCLA system, they have a great newsletter, very similar to ours, but they really delve into the conferences and preview the conferences almost like it's like, you know, an AMC movie theater preview. It's pretty damn good. So going back to some great moments, Dr. David Solomon, who I'm showing here, we lived for this right here. So this is the moment, this is at a graduation. When you got David Solomon and Alan Goldman together, you had the best freaking comedy routine you could ever have. They would pan off each other. Even Dr. Solomon would say, where's the step stool for Dr. Goldman to come up here? And Dr. Goldman would get on Dr. Solomon for things. And he was just such a great roaster of USF faculty. When he gave grad rounds, he roasted every faculty member. I would be roasting Canella. I'd be roasting Tony. I would be roasting Ramirez. And Dr. Edelman, wife actually had to call Dr. Solomon's wife because at one grad rounds, he didn't say a thing about Harold. And Harold was, I think I upset Dr. Solomon. Can you call his wife and find out why he didn't roast me? So that's how beloved a roaster he was. So he was at a morning report where an attending stated, and the attending was not a medicine attending, so I'm not going to say what specialty, but you can figure it out what other specialty would be at morning report for an adult. Anything could have led to a pneumothorax in a morning report case, even a power nebulizer. And we were, after the Bucks had lost the game to the Steelers, Solomon said a power nebulizer has as much of a chance of causing a pneumothorax as the Bucks do of winning the Super Bowl. And the Bucks ended up winning the Super Bowl. And I told Dr. Solomon, you remember that comment you made? And he goes, yeah, check those power nebulizers to make sure they're not causing any pneumothoraces, Joe. It was so funny. He still even remembered his comment. We'll turn a little bit to the chief residents. Neil Sharma, one of my great chief residents from 2010, he actually was told by GI folks, you are risking your fellowship by doing the chief residency. And he said, I don't care, like Tommy Lee Jones in The Fugitive. I want to do a year with Lezama and learn about leadership. And he got in a GI fellowship after his chief resident year. He's been a star leader in the US in GI oncology. So very, very proud of Neil Sharma. The chief residency probably started from William Halstead in Johns Hopkins in the late 1880s from surgery. And the qualities were heavy interpersonal skills and organizational ability. And recognition of academic accomplishment during residency, ladder to a career, and it was viewed that you were more of a junior faculty member than you were any type of superstar senior resident. And looking at the Journal Graduate Medical Education 2009, in a survey of 236 program directors, the average number of chief residents back then was 2.5. They made about 600 to 6,000 a year more than a third year would. So it was not a financial big thing. And 17 residents on average per every fourth year chief resident. So if you had 2 chief residents, you had 34 residents. 2.5, maybe you had 40 residents. And that result was pretty interesting. 23% of the chiefs were from another institution, which we weren't really used to here at USF. 88% received formal training, which is fantastic. 83% had a formal mentor named for the year. And that's something that we need to do a better job of here. 56% participated on the wards as an attending, as the chiefs do here. 87% of them ran the morning report conference. To show you some of the differences where we'll have some attendings run our conferences here, but we've been letting Dr. Guevara do a lot of that because she's doing a fine job. 53% actually ran a resident continuity clinic. And Dr. Shiroki is very interested in building an ambulatory care chief residency. And even 4% got a rank as instructor. In 2022, this was published in 2024, 2 years later, they looked at 22 programs and their chief residency matrix, if you will. And the interesting thing, shockingly, Beth, out of these 22 major universities, we were not included. So this study already is dubious because USF is not included. They included Florida, the Gators, but out of the 22, only 12 had chief residents in patient safety, quality, improvement, which is shocking to me because of the value of that residency that we've proven. As many had ambulatory, as did QIPS. The most common is the general, which is a chief resident that does inpatient and outpatient as well. And, you know, here I highlight that there. And we started our residency in 2011, I believe 2011 or 2010, with Emily Lorch was our first chief resident who's now practicing in the New York area. And then followed by Henry Park, who is at the VA doing simulation, and then Beth Melzer as our third chief resident. And it's interesting to see the concept of ambulatory care residencies, which tend to be more in the north and not so much in the southeast or the southwest. That was also an interesting trend. With the need to grow our ambulatory care presence, I think the chief residency might be a great idea. And this is the cool thing. 56.5 chief residents from 2011, the study was 2009 to 2022, sorry, and then published in 2024, 56.5% of the chief residents went into academic medicine. That's incredible because that's compared to 15.6% of non-chief residents. So we really can build superstar faculty with a really well-developed chief residency. These are the specialties they chose, not a surprise. Basically, it's a lot of what we've seen here. And our chief residency, our first resident who was from the outside of TGH was Seth Lipka. And we didn't stop the chief residency administrative at TGH because of him. Timing was that way. We did have QIPS start at TGH, which we've had Dr. Perry and Dr. Bertrand Rodriguez as outstanding chiefs there. We had a short-lived Moffitt Cancer Center fourth-year residency that Kelly says actually could still fill. It's still out there live, but it hasn't really had anybody in it for many years. And then the revolutionary change was getting third-year residents involved as chief residents. Dr. Mai started it at TGH, and then Dr. Aller expanded it to VA and Moffitt. And over our 25 years, as we look back, our success rate in keeping a fourth year has been about 50%, which I think we can do a lot better here. Here's some names of some folks, which include Brian Bogner in 92-93, where he was chief resident. Myra Rivera from my class was chief resident at TGH. I was going to be the chief resident at the VA that year, but Dr. Bowen offered me a job at the VA. Dr. Goldman offered me to be assistant program director with Dr. Altus. But even then, I did not accept the job till Dr. Altus told me you should take the faculty job and not the chief resident job. That's how distinguished the chief residency felt, that there's no way I would even take a faculty job. Altus's words were, I'd rather have you here for 30 years than for one. Well, we're at 26 almost, so that's pretty prophetic of him. And that was Ricky Martin, in case you have no idea who this is. That's Ricky Martin, was huge. And this was my chief residency year, or half a year, as a third year, where I introduced a one-person-led board review at the VA. I would do Swan-Ganz catheters for anyone who needed it 24/7. I was at VA and Moffitt. If a team went over 22 patients, yes, that was possible. I reviewed with the teams what they would need to do to dispo patients. I'll show you the lists of how high we got because I kept a few, and it will be horror. It would be like the best Halloween story is to show we went in a call with 16 patients and we got 14 and we had 30 at the end of the call. That would be the horror. The residents would be like, ah! So the third year, the X+Y allowed the third-year residents to get involved in talking to 60 programs preparing for this. We are the only ones out of the 60 who have third-year residents. Kelly said there's a few others that she's encountered throughout, but the 60 that I had were, and several of them said, that would be blasphemy. But I don't agree with that. I think there is a great role to do that. And what it does is it allowed the fourth-year residents, Caroline Lee and Saif Al-Mirza, these are two of the folks that really did an amazing job as VA chief residents when they were stripped of having to make schedules and look after things and this and that and the other, and could focus more on research and scholarly activity. They excelled. And I think there's a huge leadership line that we can learn from third years serving as chief residents. So I actually fought back at that blasphemy and said, you guys are missing the leadership opportunity that those residents can get, and they get it on X+Y, which is really, we have a great system to be able to support that. Another one, great morning report history, Pasquale Badat, who would say, if you ever said something was normal, he would say there is no normal other than a town in Ohio, because there was a series called Normal Ohio back in the early 2000s. And he would always say, watch out, the lawyers are waiting to get you like Goodman and Gilman. And I would always say, Goodman and Gilman are pharmacologists. And so he knew it bothered me. So he would always say Goodman and Gilman to get a rub out of me. So that was Dr. Badat. with the pharmacologist there. So shout out to the endocrinologist. The endocrinologist is like, we're not going to get anyone mentioned. Yes, you are. So, and other great moments were when we banned diagnoses from being presented at morning reports, similar to Wayne's World, where he couldn't play Stairway to Heaven. Nobody was allowed to play Stairway to Heaven. We banned PCP pneumonia for being presented because it was presented way too much in the 90s. We banned Takasubu's because it was presented way too much. And vaping, we were just tired of vaping-induced cases. And then came COVID, which has reduced any of it. We haven't had a vaping case since COVID. So what's next, the future? We have to make sure that we don't have a TSH of 85. Takeovers, I think, are the way we can keep Morning Report really fresh and keep it very pertinent, and maybe that we can measure some outcomes with this. Stump the Professors, mini Jeopardy sessions. When we used to have Jeopardy back in the heyday, the room would be filled. People would want to see the Jeopardy team and how they would play and to be supportive of them. We also had EKGs, conferences where attendings fought residents who were really good at reading EKGs. Jorge Fernandez, who is a UF cardiologist now up at UF Cardiology, he could take on attendings with great prowess, and they fought it out, and we made it into, thanks to Dan Olson, who did this, we made it into a pay-per-view series. And then Epic Jeopardy battles, this is with the medical students. This was you. So this slide was for you. That's Kelly Aller, med student up there. And Brian Coe and Francisco Toronto. And the med students beat the residents at Jeopardy. That's how good they were. And then they went on to win all types of titles. Somebody likes seeing that Kelly Aller medical student. We had Lezama versus Rice, COPD discussions on how to do. Now somebody wrote, look how long it's been. All right. We had QI discussions, which really got more mature from the old M&M. And I love the fact that we focus on differential diagnosis and why certain things don't belong on a list. And you're not going to be talking about multiple sclerosis in an 80-year-old. You just don't see MS in an 80-year-old. You're not going to be thinking about temporal arteritis generally in a 30-year-old. So those were the type of rich discussions we would have. Dr. Don Dahl, who was incredible at Morning Report, I told Don, I challenge you to bring a slide and discuss it and make it into a case. He just took off with that and then wrote a book about it. So this book is based on a lot of the cases he presented at the Haley VA Morning Report, even had mentioned me in his dedication in the book. But this is the faculty development that can come out of this Morning Report conference. And I mentioned the old man in the sea analogy. We have to really find a way where we can close the loop on some great cases that residents may gain from, oh my God, that case I totally remember, had liver lesions and had ascites and nothing was making sense. It ended up being X. Whoa, I'll remember that for next time. We got to do better at that. Also the doctor aspects, and kudos to Dr. Gupta, Dr. Mateja, and so many who do the Schwartz rounds at TGH. I think we need to permeate that in all aspects of our program. I think we have to bring the consultants back. The consultants were such a key part of Morning Report, and if we find a specialist at Morning Report, it's a case report, is basically. We used to had so much fun, or if you bring a consultant and Dr. Canella shows up, you're like, oh, this case is ID. What we need to do is Morning Report bluff. I need to bring Morning Report poker. I need to bring Canella, and the case has nothing to do with ID. And he was just there to fool everybody, right? It's like A Few Good Men, when they had the airmen in the back, and Kevin Bacon said, what would those airmen have testified? They would have said nothing. So, but they were in the back, and everybody, the optics, everybody saw Jack Nicholson saw the airman, and that's where he lost his cool as to what Tom Cruise was doing. And 2 cases have gone to 1 case in a lot of institutions. An hour has gone to 32 minutes. One day we had a 26-minute Morning Report at the VA, and that's blasphemy, Can't have that. Space has been an issue. A lot of space that used to be conference has been sold off, I like to say, to other institution priorities. We need to fight that. We need to have items of quality during morning report to celebrate our folks, and also that interdisciplinary nature of the science of the case. I had a malaria case when I was a when I was a resident, an intern, and I was so excited about it. I brought a university malaria expert to Tampa General to talk about Plasmodium falciparum or Plasmodium vivax that the patient had. There's so many things that chief residents can do to help this as well. Create guides, create pathways, work on readmissions, length of stay. We really need to give chief residents more leeway and pathway to success, and that will attract more people to wanting to do it. And the outside chief residents have been great, and that shows us that chief resident is not all treated with Windex like in My Big Fat Greek Wedding. The Knapp brothers, featured here with Beth Melzer and with Amit Kathari, who were running the program of patient safety quality improvement, and Beth is now the program director, taking over for Dr. Rice, who is just the godfather of that. The Knapp brothers came from outside and did an amazing job here. And then Dr. Prida, that is Dr. Xavier Prida, 1986, UF. If Xavier's watching this on Grand Rounds, he's going to be killing me for, Joe, you're showing me, but look at that hair. I mean, that's just like Miami Vice type of hair there in Dr. Prida. This is hanging where they have morning report at the University of Florida. We need to do more stuff like that. We need to create that sense that its chief residency is prestigious and it's being honored. I took this picture when I went to UF a few years ago and was in their morning report room. I'm going to go a little more, but Dr. Prida made a great point. When he was a chief resident, he met with the chair. He met with division directors. He talked about the pulse of the residency, the pulse of the fellowship. And he was chief resident after he did fellowship. That's why I said it's not like Windex in My Big Fat Greek Wedding. Chief residency should be a gateway to an academic career and how to get involved in leadership. And we need to celebrate it. This is Nidhi Patel with Dr. Petter, who was very disappointed he was not in any of the pictures today at Morning Report. The students heard that. So students, I have fixed the situation by getting this picture on there. And Dr. Rice, who we were so excited to see him visit the VA a week ago. We absolutely love Alex. We're celebrating here, again, Nidhi Patel's graduation. This is Mike Ward graduating as a chief resident a few years ago with Dr. Gutolo, myself, and Dr. Rice. And I think the key here is combining the chief residency and morning report for education, mentoring, and motivating. Getting that TSH closer to 0.01 than 10, endocrine, if I may. And for the GI people, if I may say, we need to get rid of those splenic flexure moments where the motivation and enthusiasm circulation is not very well supplied. That's going to be our goal, I think, as faculty with Morning Report. And really targeting PGY1s early on, and maybe even medical students who we feel, third and fourth year students. I've seen AIs. When Beth Melzer was an AI, I'm like, that's a future chief resident. For sure. Same way with Candice Mateja was my intern in July of 2007. I said, you're going to be a future faculty member who's going to win teaching awards. She's like, can I just get through intern year, Dr. Lezama? I said, okay, but that's a preview of what's going to happen. And oh, by the way, clear your wall, you're going to win resident of the year, your first year, your second year, and your third year, which she did. And this is to steal from Anthony. What's your MTM, right? For Dr. Canella, he loves non-tuberculous mycobacteria. For many of you, it's okay for that to be your NTM. So Morning Report has always been my NTM. And so finally, I got my book out there on all the pearls that I love out of Morning Report. So this is the type of, and here's 3 examples of faculty activity that came out of Morning Report. And so that's the importance. So today's Grand Rounds was to tell you the literature on Morning Report is very dubious, but I hope that what you've heard about it today maybe makes you say, absolutely, and we need to do that. And this is a great time to develop the chief resident. The chief residents and Morning Report can we meet and make morning report great and make the chief residents greater? And get the vice chairs and the chair involved with this, which Dr. Mosley absolutely speaks the academic rhetoric. In his words, we have to make sure we're able to get off the RVU treadmill and be able to meet the academic mission that we are supposed to meet. And changing the model that we've done, right? Morning report helped to bring the Rice rounds of interdisciplinary care that you see every day at the VA at 9:30 in the morning. As we talk about transitions of care, maybe more at morning report. Scholarly activity, as we talked about there. And this is why our greatest resource is you guys, right? This is my med team from June of 07 with young acting intern Bobby Ledford back there. That's Dr. Ledford next to me, with Stephanie Taylor, who'll be coming in January to give you grand rounds on mentoring, with Sanjay Saint, who is literally like the Bruce Springsteen of internal medicine. Bryce Taylor, her husband, is there featured to the left. Yuli Cho is next to me, and the two med students were actually excellent. Crystal was a great surgeon resident here. So I want to pause there. It's 12:57. We actually have the room for some time for some comments. The other IM entities I was going to talk about a little bit was just to mention a cool fact on grand rounds. As of 1982, grand rounds still had 22% of grand rounds coming with patients. And the patients actually just disrobe at grand rounds. So it's like, whoa, the 80s were a crazy time. By 2003, 95% didn't involve patients. I think there's a big thing which they said about grand rounds. It's Socratic discussion has yielded to PowerPoint presentations. And so hopefully today, I hope that today that you heard a lot of Socratic thought into what I'm bringing out, and not a lot of PowerPoint other than some thoughts and some great pictures. So with that, I'll stop and take any comments. Thank you. What do you guys have? Any questions? Jen online? Christina maybe laugh with the wow and look how long. Hey, Dr. Canella, anything from you?
Bogner has a question.
Dr. Bogner? Brian? Okay, what's his question, Jen? Oh no, I thought you said Dr. Bogner. Oh yeah, we had a hand go up and it said Bogner. He just want to be recognized. Brian is a huge, let me tell you about faculty mentoring. I had a Lezama website that I was so proud and happy, and that the ACP very much enjoyed, and I was able to be a consultant with the ACP on their electronic format conversion. Brian took me under his wing, and I know nothing about computers. He helped build the Lezama website so that I could put in all of my teaching on there. So that Brian Bogner is the epitome of faculty mentoring and a great example for us. You guys are very blessed medical students to have Dr. Bogner in your leadership circle. Any other things? Oh, here we go. Dr. Gonzalez Rothy, my mentor from UF. So thank you, Ricardo, for everything you've done in my career, to say the least. And alumni who joined, because I know a lot of alumni joined, thank you for what you've done to inspire me, because that is what keeps me going. Dr. Tony.
I was a resident.
Okay, when Dr. Tony was a resident last year.
At TGH, it was interesting because a lot of the ED docs come to morning report to find out what happened to the people that they still got admitted.
Dr. Tony's mentioning a lot of the ED docs at Tampa General would come to morning report to hear what happened to a lot of the patients they admitted. Yeah, we need to restore that type of venue, and we'll work on it. One of the things I went through there, which I think would be great, I think it would be great to have a committee with residents and faculty of all span to talk about how we make morning report better at all the institutions, but one size does not fit all. One of the things I loved about morning report is it's unique at TGH, it's unique at the VA, it's a unique at Moffitt where Charlotte Henry's here. So Henry Park, everybody. So from the slides, I think that's great that it's so unique in that way. Dr. Canella.
I'll say this, I didn't come here for residency, but I'll tell you that when I went, everybody had to be at Morning Report and New Conference. There was no, even unless you were doing a procedure or saving somebody's existence, you had to be there. And so the room was massive. Now, the challenge here is that where I went to residency, everybody was in a 1 block radius of the conference room. That's not the way it is here. So it is challenging, but you can still do that to a certain extent, but people have to get away from that. Oh, we have to make that RVU, or we have to do this, we have to do that, so that then you can actually go to the mission of education, because that's why we're here.
Okay.
If not, like I tell the residents and fellows, I should have just opened a bakery, and that's not what it's about. And we have to dedicate ourselves to really teaching, so that then they can teach us and they can teach their patients.
So Dr. Canella, excellent points. In his training at UAB and then at UCSD for fellowship, everybody was expected to be at Morning Report or Noon Conference unless you were doing a procedure or saving someone's life. Dr. Altus used to say, if you have more than one emergency at Morning Report, you're not planning your emergencies well. The emergencies are happening because you're not planning your day well, and thus you're having multiple emergencies. I love, that's another altruism that I didn't put up there. So absolutely, that's a great point, and that goes for us as faculty too, and I'm as guilty as it as well. I yell at my folks, and I professionally, courteously say, don't ever do that again when I get scheduled a meeting during Morning Report. But I've had a lot of competing interests that I should be fighting back against. So I'm always on time at Morning Report and don't get yelled at by Dr. Petter for being late. So
Dr. Prita put a comment in the chat too. He was talking about where he had trained the tradition in which he imported to UF Shands during my chief resident tenure, was that the chief resident and assistant chief would round every night, alternating every other night. He was the assistant chief resident, Sloan Kettering, review admissions, and then at Morning Report would have literature prepared to review with residents. The duty of residents was then to teach interns, the PGY1s. I did this alone at UF Shands without an assistant chief resident every night, 1986 to 1987. Best professional year of his life. All of our grand rounds were patient-based, presented by the corresponding resident.
just hearing that passion of Dr. Prita, right? That passion for learning and education that Dr. Prita embodies. And he is a gem and a gift that we have. Please always make sure that you get some time with him. The stories he tells, I just want to go out and, like read journals after I talk to him. I got to be smarter, because Xavier has that call of we need to keep learning. So Xavier, in his UF days, living in the Hale area where now my kids live at UF, also small world. He was next door neighbors with Mac Anderson. What a small world. I know. You couldn't write this stuff any better. Like I said, first time I met Dr. Rice, I was moving out of my apartment at UF. It was 2 days before graduation, and Dr. Rice came and knocked on oh, there we go. But Dr. Rice came and knocked on my door with his wife, Martina, and introduced himself. We talked and we said, maybe we'll cross paths one day. And we did, to my benefit. All right, I think that's good. Why don't we wrap it up? Thank you guys for coming. I appreciate y'all. Take care. Thank you all on virtual land.